So, okay, in terms of other legacies of Brexit, then, of course, there was this term global Britain that we did hear a lot, and this partly meant trade deals. But it seems to also, of course, Brexit gave us more control over our border, and we brought in that points-based system from 2021, and it really relaxed a lot of things under Boris Johnson and Priti Patel, social care visas, other requirements to advertise jobs here first were scrapped, and many other things. And that resulted in what is now come to be known as the Boris wave of immigration, which was largely low skilled. It was about 3 million people over 3 years, 3 cities the size of Birmingham. And so, well, what do you make of course, as we know, the Tories did very, very poorly at the last election. I'm in fact going to talk about some of their very low polling figures in a second. And this is seen as this great betrayal of Brexit. What do you make of that being tied to, well, I suppose that being the first thing that the Tories decided to do with those new Brexit freedoms?
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously a catastrophic political and economic and social error to do it. And I think I've said before that, I think the actual error was not so much the initial decisions on visas and immigration in 2020 and early 2021, because we were in the middle of a sort of massive economic shock through COVID. But it was the failure to correct. And in 2021, in 2020, nobody knew how many people had left. The economy shrank by about a third in the first half of the year. There were obvious supply chain strains and all these other things. And so I think, I wasn't involved in the decisions, but my impression from sort of hearing people talking about it was a bit of nervousness not to make any of that inadvertently worse by being too tight. The problem was that as soon as it became obvious that people were flooding in, we should have tightened up much more quickly than we did. In fact, we did the reverse. We added more occupations to the shortage list. By then, we had a Prime Minister in Rishi Sunak who said, nobody really cares about legal migration. It's only illegal migration that's a problem. And he carried on and got more and more liberal. And that's really the problem. People do make mistakes. And the decisions in 20 and 21 were definitely a mistake. But I think the blame is those who didn't tighten up fast and allowed this to continue until almost the last moment of Conservative government. And now, it's a very serious social, economic problem that the British economy and a lot of its political class just seem hooked on high migration and very reluctant to control it in the way that's necessary. And we absolutely must in future. It's going to be very difficult for the Conservative Party to shake off that legacy, I fear, given those decisions.
Well, yes, and particularly there have been suggestions from some places that the way to get the Conservative Party out of their present woes is to bring back Boris Johnson. But to many people, that will seem like madness, given that he is the one who indeed has this term Boris wave attached to him and is sort of principally to blame for this. Surely that's not the right way to go.
I don't know what Boris is planning. Obviously, I do talk to him, but I don't know, whether he's planning a comeback or not. I think the problem for Boris is obviously going to be on that issue and on net zero. Politics on the right has just moved massively since he was in charge. And, I don't know whether, even if he is willing to kind of repudiate the past, his great thing was kind of authenticity and sort of, telling people, connecting with people. People felt they kind of knew what they were getting. And to suddenly say, I got it wrong and I no longer believe this stuff, it kind of weakens that aspect to it. So I don't know. I think it's a pity he's sort of not in public life, but I struggle really to see him coming back as a kind of, leading Conservative politician, I must admit.